You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 287. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, author of How to Get On Podcasts, the podcast matchmaker, and CEO and founder of the MLG Collective. I'm excited to share the stories and life lessons of changemakers and authors with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac. Today, my guest is Dr. Samra Zafar. She is the author of A Good Wife and the newest book, Unconditional, where she is breaking down barriers on how to get past trauma that has happened in your life and to transform your life and discover who you're meant to be. Her story is absolutely incredible, and I am so excited that she was willing to share her journey with all of us on how she was a child bride who was sent to Canada, who was abused by her spouse and escaped her marriage to become a doctor and thriving mother of two, and how she has broken all of these generational traumas. It's incredible. And I really enjoyed getting to talk to Dr. Zafar, and I know that you will love hearing her story. Hi, Samra.
Hi, Michelle.
I am so looking forward to getting to know you and talk all about your journey and your incredible book, Unconditional, out now. Can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled and honored to be here and so excited for this conversation. My name is Dr. Samra Zafar, and I am a mother, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a physician. There's many hats that I wear, and all the stuff that I do in my life comes from a place of deep purpose, which is driven by my own journey, which we'll jump into in a bit. Um, but yeah, that's sort of who I am in short, and many other different things.
You wear many hats, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading Unconditional to the point that there were some passages that I actually screenshotted and sent to friends. And now I'm like, which part? There was a part where it was about like what other people say and just being like, get rid of them, forget them. And it was hilarious in the way that you framed it. And I sent it to a friend. I'm like, this is it. Look at what I'm reading. This is so good.
Oh, I love it. I love that. That's sort of like what I have done so many times with books I've enjoyed, especially books in this category, in this genre of like personal development, personal growth. And now to hear that, someone is screenshotting my book and sending it to people, I'm like, wow, this is so validating.
Well, and I also loved, and I know this was a big part of what you wanted to include in the book was your own personal stories and how they related to each. You took examples from your own life, made them applicable to basically the lesson that we all needed to take away, but how you applied them. And it made it much more personable and relatable, I felt.
Yeah, you know what? That was my goal to begin with when I started writing this book, is because I find that a lot of these personal growth books and books in this genre are either books that are from a very research-based angle. They're very sciencey, and I'm a nerd at heart, so I love those pieces. But then, it also leaves people feeling like, I wish I could see myself in that. How is that applicable to me? And I'm a big storyteller at heart, and I think stories are what connect us and they make us relatable. And as a physician, oftentimes we see people putting doctors on a bit of a pedestal and thinking that, oh, this person is telling me how to do this, but they haven't really lived in my shoes. And I wanted to express myself in a very vulnerable way, that I've been there too. So the lessons that I'm sharing, the insights and the aha moments that I'm talking about are not just coming from, oh, this is what I learned in neuroscience. They're coming from a place of lived experience. And I think that combination of story and science together, and then bringing some aha moments and takeaways for readers to embody in their own lives, is basically the essence of the book. You know, it's the soul of the book. I wanted to bring the lived experience and um, the research and science, but in a very applicable and accessible way that people can see themselves in those stories as well.
Hmm. Take me back to what life was like, because you touch on this in the book. Your first book is about your life, memoir, and you lived quite the experience. So I would love to hear more details about it, because it plays such a huge part in this book too, as to why you have fought so hard to get to where you are, that you didn't just come right out of college and become a doctor and life was all cheery and that was just the path you went on. You've had quite the journey in the road.
Yes, yes. The reason I wrote this book and the reason I wrote my first book was to really share that journey and make it relatable and accessible to people, because I know that my story is not just my story. And growing up, I was that young girl who was always questioning things like, why is that girl my age not in school and cleaning my house? Or why is that kid my age working on the street or begging on the street? So I grew up in Abu Dhabi. I'm born in Pakistan. So even though I went to a nice, fancy British school, I saw a lot of disparities around me that were just not okay. And the answer that I was given to my questions was, well, this is the way it is. This is how the world works. This is your destiny. That's their destiny. And that never quite sat right with me. And I was always a bit of an envelope pusher. So when I was told I can't go play cricket with the boys anymore, I started my own girls' cricket team in my school and started my newspaper in school to share my radical ideas about gender equality at the time. So and then at this age of 16, I was forced into marriage to a man who I had never met before, who was much older than me and who lived in this faraway country called Canada. So I arrived in Canada as a child bride in a forced marriage, having no idea who this person is, what this country is, feeling terrified and petrified, and also a little bit of hope that maybe this is the land where I can fulfill my dreams and I can become a doctor like I've always wanted to, and I can, change the world and make a difference, etc. However, very quickly I was told I can't go to school. I cannot have any freedom or autonomy, and I was told that I'm actually it's for my own good because I'm being protected from the world outside that liberates women because it's a bad thing. And the marriage was extremely constrictive, extremely oppressive and abusive. And over the years, it got worse and worse and worse. And it took a long time for me to fight my way out of that, being able to put myself through high school while at home, completed high school through distance learning, and then worked as a babysitter at home and saved money secretly to eventually go and get my education in university and then eventually leave the marriage, which went against everything that I had been taught. And my own family turned against me, and the amount of shame and hate and ostracization that I've faced from my family and the community I was part of at that time, and then rebuilding from there, and which was really challenging, really difficult. I have two daughters, and my older daughter was born when I was a child, and then my younger daughter was born shortly after. So I remember, thinking that I don't want them to have the same life that I did. I don't want them to struggle for their education the way that I did. I want them to have the opportunity to fulfill all their dreams and goals and do it because it's a right, not because it's a privilege, not because they have fought for it. It should be there for them as it should be for every girl and every woman on the planet. So that was my driving force. And, going through all that journey and coming out of it. And then I thought that my biggest challenge would be to learn new skills, how to pay my bills, how to network, how to fill gas in my car. Uh, However, I found that the biggest journey that I have been on over the past decade since I left my marriage was unlearning the things that I had been taught about my own capabilities and my own boundaries and how I should behave as a woman, and all these conditioning and constriction that the world places on us as women because of our gender, because of the role we should fill in a patriarchal society. And that is what Unconditional, the second book, is about, is really about shedding those beliefs and breaking through those limits, because we are born with so much power inside of us. And when we realize that, we become unstoppable.
I think we're seeing a lot of that here in America right now.
I think that's an understatement. Yeah.
We are rising, we are full of rage. Yeah, and I loved there's also a part that you didn't mention. You lived with your in-laws, and so
Yes.
they were a part of this big oppression. It wasn't only your husband. They allowed it, they encouraged it, and I almost want to say your sneakiness, but your your ways of, I want to get my driver's license, so I'm going to tell my mother-in-law, then, I could drive us to the store, wink,
Yeah.
wink, and then I can do things to help you, but really you were helping yourself, and you were just so smart about it. You were able to escape this because of the actions you took and the smarts that you had of knowing, okay, I have to, if I want to do this, I'm going to have to do it this way.
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
I think the first few years of my marriage, I was just lost. I didn't know what to do or how to take a next step. But soon I discovered that, okay, my mother in law is the queen bee. If she agrees to something, everybody will agree. And this is how patriarchy works, right? So if you think about my ex mother in law, she was married at the age of 14. Didn't even finish grade 8. She had 6 kids by the time she was 21. She was actually physically abused by her mother in law. So she herself was a victim of all of this. So, what happens to a lot of women, because when they are accustomed to patriarchy, they eventually, when they get to a stage where they so-called earned the stripes or gotten some power now after all the oppression they faced, and whatever crumbs of power are left over by the men in the community, right? Now they want to be the queen bee, right? And this is how we see women putting down other women, and this perpetual cycle continues. So I have a lot of empathy for her. At the same time, I knew at that time that if I'm going to get something done, it has to go through her. So I said, okay, let's learn how to drive. And then I got my driver's license and she didn't. Or this is how I'm going to get my car, because I can now take you shopping, and or let me get, if I get a cell phone that you can have the home phone to talk to all your friends. So I knew that when she's on board, everybody would be on board, and she thrived on that power. So I sort of used it to my advantage. But it wasn't something that I, started off thinking about. It was just something, because when you have a vision in your mind about what you want to do, and I talk about courage, the essence of courage is first of all a vision. And I used to be that. In those early years of my marriage, even though there was no hope of ever being able to go to school, I would stand in front of a mirror and I would practice my graduation speech, hoping that one day it will happen. So when you have a vision, when you believe in something so strongly, your brain starts to look for opportunities to make it happen. You automatically, oh, maybe if I do it this way, maybe if I do it that way. So it was that sort of creativity that kind of, okay, what about this? What about that? Okay, that didn't work. Let's try this step. And it sort of led to all these like little actions that I took along the way that ultimately led to my freedom.
It's amazing. And then you talk about your girls in it too, and how you kind of grew up together. And I love that there's one section where you said something and your daughter kind of was like, no, mom, like, I get why you're saying that, but here's how my reaction is. And you've grown together, but they
Mhm.
also realize, like, they're not going to live the life that you have lived because you escaped that and you brought them with you, while you're also all growing together to figure this out and this new kind of normal that you're doing together.
Absolutely. And, something my older daughter says to me, uh, and I find it so hilarious, but also just so validating. Like, go girl, even though part of me is so frustrated. So every time we butt heads, and we butt heads often, and I would sort of like, no, you can't say that to me. I'm your mother, blah, blah, blah. And she would say, you know what, mom? If you wanted me to just agree with everything you said, you shouldn't have raised me to be a bold woman. And I'm like, if you're going to raise a bold daughter, you have to be okay with her challenging you. So I'm kind of like, okay, this is a double-edged sword here because, on one hand, a part of me is like, yes, I'm so proud of you that you are so convicted and you're so, convinced on your beliefs, and you're so that conviction you have, that power you have, that voice you have, that's so awesome. And on the other hand, I'm like, don't use it on me. So it's really interesting. And so but at this, obviously, the side of the I'm proud of you always wins. But it can be frustrating, and I think, given how she and I have kind of grown up together, especially with my older daughter, because I was very young. I was 18 when I had her. And I grew up in such a sheltered environment, so I didn't even go through all those teen years of making mistakes and dating, and having breakups, and the shitty boyfriends and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually went through all of that after my marriage ended. So I had a period of a few years where I had those weirdos and the dates and whatever, and so she also was going through that at the same time, because she was a teenager with that, normal sort of upbringing at that time. So she and I would oftentimes talk about our bad dates, and the friend drama and this and that, and it was like, we so funny because we are mother and daughter, but we're also like two teenage girls, like confiding in each other. So I think we just share a very special bond, and we've done a lot of healing together as a family.
And you talk about some of these wackadoos that you did. There was one that I'm like, I've interviewed the host of the Dateable podcast. So although I have not dated in decades, I've become familiar with some of these terms that they use. And the one guy, I'm like, oh, he's love bombing her. He's
Yeah.
just throwing everything like, I'm like, that's a love bomb. This isn't going to last.
Absolutely, yes. And again, I never knew what healthy love is like. It was not modeled for me. My parents' marriage was certainly not healthy, and neither was mine. And neither were any of the marriages that I saw around me. They were all filled with so much patriarchy and power imbalance. So when I got out of my marriage, and suddenly, like, yes, I want to be with somebody. I want to, be in a relationship. I want to date. I want to, explore what's out there, and enjoy myself and have fun. But how do I even go about doing that when you don't know what red flags are, and all you know about love is from like movies, and that's all like in the movies, love is portrayed as very much as love bombing, right? So you
Yeah.
think that somebody who tells you I love you on the fifth date is so romantic, even though now I'm like, that's a huge giant red flag, like run away. So in the beginning of a relationship, especially when if you feel it's too good to be true, it usually is, but no one teaches you that. So a lot of my work today, as an advocate and a psychiatrist, is I work with a lot of young women, and helping educate them on what are the red flags to watch out for. So if a guy says I love you on the third date, run away.
Fun. Yeah.
If somebody is calling you nonstop, if somebody is showering you with all kinds of affection, it feels amazing, because that's like, wow, finally I found the prince of my dreams, and finally somebody gets to treat me right. Especially if you have been in an abusive relationship before, or you've had men treat you badly before. Now somebody comes in swooping like a knight in shining armor, and is getting you roses every day. It is treating you like you walk on water. It feels amazing. It feels like, wow, finally someone gets me and gets my worth. But even, it's not real. It's like smoke and mirrors. And oftentimes, my daughter calls that fool's gold. It's like when you scratch the surface, it starts to come out, and then they start putting you down, and you're always trying to climb back on that pedestal, and that's when they start using their power.
And then the other type that you had was the ones who would act supportive of your rise to success and then all of a sudden go, "Oh, but maybe you could just not publish that book because it's too big for me."
I had, yeah, I had a
Yeah.
guy actually say to me, I don't feel like a man with you. Can you please be less successful so that I can feel comfortable? And I'm like, in what world would you ever think a woman would say that to a man? Can you be less successful so I can feel comfortable? Can you ever imagine a woman saying that to a man? And the fact that, a man thinks it's perfectly reasonable to say, and this is an educated man with 3 degrees, making more money than me, and telling me that he loves me so much, but he can only be with me if I'm less successful. And then like I don't feel like a man with you. I'm like, then you know what? It's your definition of being a man that's really screwed up. Like that's what you need to change
Yeah,
and
it's you,
rework.
not me.
Yeah. So whenever people tell me that, oh, you're too intimidating, I'm like, no, I'm not. They are intimidated,
Hmm.
and that is on them, not on me.
I love that. Yeah, there's some real weirdos out there.
But again, like think about it. Like women are rising and we are realizing our power, which is amazing. But men have not been taught how to deal with that. Men are still living in that utopian era where, women should just bend over backwards because they're a guy. A guy is paying them attention. I mean, I have patients. I have young men. In like a few weeks ago, I had a patient who, a 21-year-old kid, a pretty good looking guy, and basically telling me that his biggest issue is that he cannot get women to sleep with him because he is doesn't have a job, he doesn't have all these things, and it's so hard now, and struggling with depression because of it. And on one hand, I was like, you know what? Like, first of all, women should not be just sleeping with you because you're a guy. So good for the women, but also I felt a part of me felt sorry for him. Like the boys nowadays, they are men, young men are not being taught what to do, and then they listen to the likes of people who I shall not name, who
Hmm.
basically tell them that feminism is bad, and feminists are man haters, and all these messages that you hear. So they embody that because it's speaking to some of their pain points. And I think we need to do a better job of educating young men on what consent is and what healthy love is, and also their worth is not tied to how many women they can score.
Hmm.
So there's a bit of a divide that I think we need to work together.
And how do we even do like where do we start? How do we even get there? What do you tell this young man? Because obviously he's learning this from somewhere else. He's getting information, and in this day and age, we know this, and we get it. I'm in America. We know it. We get where it's coming
Yeah.
from. But how do we not just? I think that those of us, like I have a 10-year-old, so I know what I'm doing to combat that, so that in 10 years from now, he's not going to be sitting on your couch saying what this kid said. What do we do with these 20-year-olds who are
I
saying
think
that?
exactly what you're doing, right? I think it has to come from parents. The best education begins at home. So I think having strong mothers and strong women who are role models in their lives, and then seeing men who champion that, that is very important. I'm currently now in a relationship with a man who champions me like no tomorrow, and I love that because my daughters get to see that, and now they're like, wow, that is actually possible. So I think that is one, how we are parenting our children. And then I think also a big part of it is our education system and the books we read, the things we get exposed to, the media that we have, that we are consuming. Instead of portraying women as these helpless damsel in distress and the man coming in swooping to rescue her and then feeling like a man, well, women are not damsels in distress anymore. We don't need
Mhm.
rescuing. We need people who support us and understand that relationships are not a competition, they're a partnership. So, a woman's success does not mean that we are taking away the masculinity of a man. So I think those messages are so deeply ingrained in society. So it's not going to happen overnight, and
Hmm.
it has to be a multi-pronged approach. So that education at home, having role models in life that emulate different behaviors, and then just unlearning and reforming our education system. And I think, one part of it is also being deliberate about these conversations. Have these conversations with your sons, with your young men. What are some things you're hearing at school? Let's talk about this. Let's see where it comes from. Encouraging them to consume healthier media, read books written by women, so they can empathize and put themselves in those women's shoes and see them as equal human beings rather than just somebody that they want to, get into bed with. So I think it's those small actions that will create big impact.
We have so much work to do. Uh,
I know. And sometimes it feels daunting, right? Sometimes it feels like, especially right now, the world we're living in, it feels like we're fighting an uphill battle. Like
yeah.
I wrote an op-ed a few weeks ago about this whole trend about trad wives and women basically championing the whole trad wives movement and thinking that what it looks like is you look pretty and your husband is going to come home and he's going to bring you flowers and you're going to have dinner ready and then you're going to have sex and then you're going to have a beautiful night together. That's not what trad wives looks like. I was a trad wife. So, once you give away a little bit of that power of yours, which is the financial power and the employment power, then it's a very slippery slope from down there, right? You
Yes.
like you lose power in other aspects of your life, and you giving somebody that power imbalance is what ultimately leads to abuse and oppression. And I'm not saying every person is going to abuse that power, but a lot of them will. And that is why, even in today's day and age, in North America, almost 50% of women are facing some form of intimate partner violence or some form of physical or sexual violence. So, it's we're not bringing the numbers down. They're only
Right.
going to go up. And during the pandemic, it's gone even further up. So it's really important to realize that we are equals, and don't give someone that power unless they've earned it and they've proven to you that they're not going to abuse it. And even then, your agency, your education, your autonomy is your right, and is the biggest thing you can do for yourself.
I so agree. I did a tongue-in-cheek video just a few weeks ago saying that I'm a mod wife and not a trad wife. And
I love
I gave all of the different ways. My husband was in on it. He did the dishes because that's what husbands can do. He, um,
it.
I showed that I have my own credit cards and my name, all of these things that I'm like, yeah, I come home and I put my sweats on. I'm not walking around in an apron and heels, I'm not wearing makeup. Like, this is what you get.
Yeah.
And too bad, but I make
Yeah.
my own decisions.
The
This
only
is
time I wear makeup and stuff is if I'm on a stage delivering a speech or
exactly
being, or working, and that works. But like my work as a physician, I'm in scrubs and I do not wear makeup. Especially when you work in psychiatry. Like it can be taken in very different contexts. So and that doesn't mean that I am not an equal or I'm not worthy of love or attractive or any of that. Like I think finding a partner and being with somebody who's attracted to your intelligence and who you are as a person is much more important and much more sustainable, because looks fade and you'll eventually get wrinkles, and then what? Right? You can't
right.
walk around in heels and an apron all your life. So I think it's really important that you are an equal from the get-go, and don't give away your autonomy and your agency.
I love it. I'm going to find that op-ed. I want to share that.
Yeah,
I'll put it with my tongue-in-cheek
absolutely.
video, and
Yeah.
but it's so important because you're so right that this trad perspective it leads to abuse. It leads to it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's gross. The expectations in so many different levels is just unrealistic, and Yeah, I'm glad we agree on all of this.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's a slippery slope. Once you start in one aspect, it filters into others because you're giving away that power, that agency, that autonomy, that independence. And the other person, because, and especially if that is the nature, like when I got married as a kid, there was a natural power imbalance. So a power imbalance will always lead to abuse of power. And eventually it did. So it doesn't start off that way. That's the thing about abuse. It doesn't start off as abusive. It's not like somebody is going to start slapping and kicking you around the very first day. It is many years down the road sometimes. And oftentimes in abusive marriages, there is no physical abuse. Physical abuse is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many other forms of abuse, like economic abuse and psychological, verbal, emotional, financial. Like there's so many different layers and layers and layers of that, which are invisible. And the scars are invisible. And it is oftentimes actually far, far more damaging. And what I still struggle with and heal from is not the few times that he raised his hand on me. It is actually those words that still ring in my
Mhm.
ears and my head that, oh, you're not worthy of this opportunity. You can't apply for that promotion. You can't go on that stage. You can't write that book. Who do you think you are? Some hot shot that you're going to conquer the world. Like those are the kinds of messages that still live in my head that I am countering every single day. And basically, nope, I know where that voice is coming from. I'm not going to listen to it. And that's like the work that I talk about in Unconditional is because people can go out of your lives and still live in your mind. And that is what psychological and non-physical abuse does.
As well as perpetuate it when our children are seeing it,
Yeah,
witnessing it, and living through it, that becomes the norm. So
absolutely.
it goes along with the trad wife, and you're raising your children and this is okay, and then that's why we still have children who become adults who
Mhm.
perpetuate it, which
Yeah,
is why this is taking so long to fix and change. And
totally.
the work you're doing is amazing. Your book was incredible. I enjoyed it so much. I am so glad that you shared your personal stories with us along with your knowledge, and you're just a delight. I'm like, we need more of you.
Thank you. So are you. Oh my God, I can't believe like the half hour just flew by. No, I feel like we could sit and have conversations for hours and we
I
can
think so. Yeah, I think we have a lot we could talk
have
about.
beverages on the side, like thinking high tea.
I love it. That sounds fancy. Yes. Where can everybody find you and find Unconditional, your book?
So the book is available online. You can order it through Amazon. I think that's the most reliable and foolproof way to order it in the US. It is available. I think I saw it on Target as well on their website. So you can order it there as well. And you can find me on all socials. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. Those are the two big ones. Uh, Facebook I don't use as much, and X I don't use at all. So I think Instagram and LinkedIn would be the two, and my website has all the information you need about me. And I want to mention that I have promised to join any book clubs who pick up my book. I will join them for a conversation. So if you have a book club, if you're part of a book club, if you want to start a book club, and you want to read the book, either the first one or the second one, or both, you can do so. And just send me an email through my website. If you go to the contact page, it comes directly to my inbox, and let me know, what date you're meeting. Once you read the book, and I will join you. I will dial in virtually and join you over Zoom.
I
And
love that.
yeah, so please pick up the book.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pure joy.
Friends, I hope that you take away from Dr. Zafar's story that this recently happened. This is literally just a decade old. It is not that far fetched. It is still happening today. These things are still going on, cycles of abuse, of trauma. And as we were talking about, people are allowing it to happen and perpetuating the trad wife notion that that's okay. It's not okay. It is literally the launching point of how things like this happen. I'm so grateful that Dr. Zafar has shared her story, that she continues to speak out. And know that if you are in this cycle, you are not alone and there is hope. She is a fantastic resource. I highly suggest you reach out to her, you find her book, you read it, and to help not only yourself, but the future generations so that we can stop perpetuating these cycles that need to stop, that we communicate with our children, that we have these conversations that are so difficult to have because it is so important that we do better, we know better, we can live better.